Hi, I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography based here in beautiful sunny Naples, Florida. And today we get to review a piece of awesome. Oh yeah! The Sigma 120-300 f2.8 OS-S is the third revision of this lens, and it just got refreshed with Sigma's global vision treatment. Everything about this lens is big, beautiful, and just an over-the-top expression of photographic excess. But there is a looming question. Can it hold a candle to the fixed focal length super telephoto primes from both Canon and Nikon? Well, we're going to spend the next 5 or 10 minutes to find out. This is the third iteration of the Sigma 120-300 f2.8. The second version was highly regarded. It included optical stabilization and was generally considered to be optically excellent. Then the Sigma Global Vision came into existence, and Sigma has literally turned the photography world on its head with fantastic optics, robust and stylish build qualities, a great warranty, and all at significantly lower prices than first-party competition from both Canon and Nikon. Given its unusual, albeit useful, zoom range, the Sigma 120-300 f2.8s can be used from everything from portraits to sport and birding. Sigma has placed this lens in the sporting realm with its S designation. And I recognize this may sound a bit strange, but I bought this lens to take great portraits. I personally love the compressed background look at 300mm. Believe me, I recognize that this is a lot of lens to be used in a portrait session, but I just love the results. The other looming question, of course, is how does the Sigma 120-300S hold up to the much more expensive super telephotos from both Canon and Nikon? Well, we're going to spend the next 5 or 10 minutes to take a look at this absolute beast of a lens to find out. Okay, so first up is build quality. Let me start by saying right out of the gate that the Sigma 120-300 is just an awesome physical specimen. In fact, if this thing were an American football player, it'd be Lawrence Taylor in his prime. And now if you don't know who Lawrence Taylor is, Google that guy. He was a monster. Coming in at nearly 7.5 pounds, this lens is not for the faint of heart. It's the Airbus A380 of lenses, meaning hand-holding for an extended period of time shouldn't even be a consideration. You're going to need a nice sturdy tripod or monopod. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself really winded with some very achy biceps. The lens is made out of Sigma's new Global Vision polycarbonate, and it's a stylish and beautiful lens. It's a work of art. It's the sort of thing you'd want to take a photo of with a Sigma Art Series lens. Now the focus and zoom rings are extremely well dampened and operate very fluidly, especially the focus ring. Now the lens hood is in a whole other league of build quality. It's made out of that same polycarbonate, but it feels like it could withstand a 10-foot drop. Now, don't try that, of course. That's just my impression. The lens is also weather sealed and protected from the elements, meaning that if you're working with it outdoors and it starts to rain, you should be fine. It's also very important given that it is a Sports Series lens. It's also part of Sigma's Global Vision, and that means it's compatible with the Sigma USB dock, a really slick device that, in case you haven't seen it yet, this thing allows you, the photographer, to fine-tune and personalize certain functions of the lens. For example, do you want the autofocus to have accuracy or speed priority? And you can set that and save it and then come back to it later. It's really neat. On the inside, there are a whopping 23 elements in 18 groups. That's a lot of glass. It focuses and zooms internally, meaning that it does not extend during regular operation. Now on the downside, Sigma inexplicably chose to go with lens-mounted filters. And in case you can't tell, that is a seriously big front element. In fact, it's 105 millimeters to be exact. The Sigma lacks those drop-in and much smaller filters found on the super telephotos from both Canon and I'm pretty sure Nikon too. I mean, seriously, look at the size of this lens cap. It's not a lens cap, it's a frisbee. You get the idea. Everything about this lens is big and overstated, but apart from the filter size and the extreme weight, there's really a lot to love about the 120-300. So for build, Sigma just nails it. It's top notch and easily earns a 10 out of 10. So next up is focus speed and accuracy. It's reasonably fast, but it's in no way Canon ultrasonic fast. Using the closest Canon equivalent lens that I have to the 120-300, which is the Canon 70-200 Mark II, I had them both on full frame cameras and both set to their minimum focus distance, and both focused on the same object. When I did that, it was pretty clear just how much faster the ultrasonic motor is. Now, that said, you can customize various aspects of the Sigma lens via the Sigma dock, and it can either be set to focus faster or to focus more accurately. The faster focus priority is definitely faster, but still not quite up to the Canon. But again, it's certainly more than adequate for most situations. One of the cool things about the 120 to 300 is your ability to save settings and switch between them under the custom function 1 and custom function 2 settings. So let's say, for example, you're shooting a football game and you want the focus priority to be set for speed. Well, you can make that custom function 1 here on the lens. And let's say later in the day, you're going to shoot portraits. Well, you can set the focus accuracy priority to custom function 2 and just switch to that. So depending on what you're going to be using the 120 to 300 for, the dock and the custom functions can be a really useful tool, especially if your photography isn't limited to just sports or portraits. Now, for me personally, I prefer focus accuracy over speed, but in either case, I find the focus speed to be fast enough. And based on my experience with the lens, the focus is very, very accurate on my 5D Mark III. Now, as for using the lens to track runners or for sports, it seems to track pretty well. Now, that said, the best I could do is track my 6-year-old running toward me in the backyard. Not the fastest subject, I admit, but the keeper rate was very high, and I found the sharpness of the shots to be really excellent. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, it's probably important for me to tell you that I bought this lens for portraits. I know it's crazy to buy a lens like this for portraits, but for that purpose, this lens exceeds my expectations. But all in, it's a solid effort, and for focus speed and accuracy, the 120 to 300 gets an 8.5 out of 10. Now, just for the record, I would have scored a bit higher if the focus motor were just a little bit faster. Okay, so up next is optical quality and the quality of the results. There are two schools of image quality thought and measurement out there. First, the world of test charts and technical image quality, where a lens's resolving power is measured against the number of lines it can reproduce in sharp focus on a test chart. But these setups require precision and consistency to have any real meaning. Then there's the real world, where the majority of photographers and videographers live. Now, I'm not saying there isn't value to a technical analysis of a lens. Far from it, there absolutely is. But generally speaking, most of us are shooting real subjects in the real world under constantly changing conditions. Now, the point of me saying that is, technically speaking, I am sure the Sigma is not as technically sharp as the Canon or Nikon Super Telephoto Prime lenses. But the difference is so nominal in real-world shooting that only the most crazed of pixel peepers would ever be able to notice the difference. I personally find the Sigma to be amazingly sharp and much more useful than the average fixed prime telephoto because the Sigma can zoom. Now, in general, zoom lenses are not as sharp as primes, and the Sigma is no exception to that rule. But in my view, it's really, really sharp. But as in all of my reviews, it's one thing for me to talk about image quality, it's another thing to show you image quality. The next minute or so will be a series of stills and video clips taken with the Sigma 120 to 300S, and let there be little doubt, the Sigma is capable of optical excellence. Okay, so last up is value. Now, it's really tough to say with a straight face something that costs $3,599 is a great value, because in real terms, the Sigma costs a small fortune, but relatively speaking, it's a deal. Now, on the upside, it has a very useful focal range and a constant f2.8 aperture throughout that focal range as well, which is nothing short of amazing. And the lens has image stabilization to boot. Oh, and it has image quality that can compete with first-party glass from both Canon and Nikon. Now, to be clear, it's not as sharp as the Canon and Nikon Super Telephotos, but it's close, really, really close. And the lens, again, is a lot more useful. Something else to consider is the ability to switch between custom functions on the fly via the Sigma dock and the Sigma Global Vision lens custom function like 1 and 2 here. It's very, very cool because you can save those settings. Now on the downside is this massive 105mm front element. It's really something to think about, as high quality filters that size do not come cheap. And secondly, you have to remember that this thing tips the scale at nearly 7.5 pounds. You're gonna need a sturdy tripod or monopod to handle this beautiful beast. But given its overall build quality, excellent optics, useful focal range, then it's really hard to beat the Sigma in the arena of value super telephoto lenses, especially when you consider the price of first-party competition. So for value, we gave the Sigma a very solid 9.5 out of 10. Okay, it's that time again. Time to draw some conclusions about the Sigma 120-300 f2.8s lens. It goes like this, in a nutshell. The build quality. Sigma's Global Vision has turned this monster into an absolutely beautiful work of art. It's made out of polycarbonate, it's weather sealed, and the lens hood is one of the toughest and best built lens hoods that I've ever seen. The whole package is just an awesome physical specimen. On the downside, it weighs in at a whopping 7.5 pounds, meaning it's not for the squeamish. It also means a sturdy tripod or monopod is practically essential. And the front filter thread is a massive 105mm, making for expensive lens protection, polarization, neutral density, etc. But even with those negatives, we just love the 120-300's physical prowess. For build, we gave it a 10 out of 10. Autofocus speed and accuracy. It's slower than a Canon ultrasonic. I'd go as far as to say that the Sigma is only about 2/3 as fast as the Canon. That said, when you switch to focus speed priority via the Sigma dock, then the AF speed is noticeably faster and just shy of a Canon ultrasonic. But you have to remember, when you're in that mode, you do sacrifice a bit of focus accuracy. However, even at the standard setting, the autofocus speed is adequate for nearly all situations. The lens also tracks moving subjects, think sports, really well. I recognize that it's a bit strange for someone to use this lens or a lens like this with portraits as his primary subject matter, but that's why I bought it. And the focus accuracy for my purposes is nothing short of excellent. But in the end, I'd be lying if I didn't say I wish the focus speed was just a little bit faster. For AF speed and accuracy, the Sigma gets an 8.5 out of 10. Optical quality and the quality of the results. For those of us that shoot in the real world, the Sigma is optically excellent. No, it's not as sharp as the big boys from Canon and Nikon, but it's really, really close. So close, in fact, that only the most crazed of pixel peepers with their test charts will be able to tell the difference. But the Sigma is also about half the price, and it's more useful than the fixed focal length primes from Canon and Nikon, because unlike those lenses, the Sigma actually zooms, and the focal range is very useful for a variety of applications. The bottom line is the Sigma is capable of making superb images. We give it a 9 out of 10 for optical quality and a 9.5 out of 10 for the quality of the results. Value. Let's be very clear, it's not cheap. It's only relatively cheap when compared to the Canon and Nikon 200mm f2s or the Canon and Nikon 300mm f2.8s, which are about 40% more expensive than the Sigma. Anyone that wants to spend this kind of money on a lens had better be a paid professional or someone who's a very serious enthusiast that wants close to the pinnacle of image quality. That said, if you're in the market for a lens at this price point, then you have to consider the Sigma, as its relative value is one of its greatest attributes. For value, it's a 9.5 out of 10. Overall, we gave the Sigma a 46.5 out of 50, and it gets our coveted highly recommended rating. The final word. If you can afford this kind of telephoto lens, and if you're in the market for something in this price range that covers these focal lengths, then you have to consider the new Sigma 120-300 f2.8s as a viable alternative. If you can live with the 7.5 pound weight and the 105mm front filter thread, then the Sigma is about 97% of the first-party offerings from Canon and Nikon for about 60% of the price. Oh, and it's more versatile too. This is Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, based here in beautiful sunny Naples, Florida. If you like these reviews that I've been producing, please don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and until the next time, happy shooting.